I'm about to show you 3 different sets. We've got 2 above ground sets and we've got a concealed set. Most possum trappers don't bother with concealed sets, but I've had a great deal of success with them. You would never use a ground set or a concealed set in an area with kiwi or weka. That's where you'll use above ground sets, which I'm about to show you. So we'll do the above ground sets first, and then I'll show you the concealed set. I'll use a Victor, and the reason for that is, the first one I'll show you is just using 2 nails. And the springs, as you can see on the Victor there, are slightly wider than they are on the Bushmaster. Why that makes a difference will all become clear in a minute. So I use 90mm nails, and the ends are previously flattened with a hammer. So just get your hammer on a bit of steel or on a rock. Well, steel is better than a rock because you don't have bits of rock flying around, and just flatten them out. You want it at about knee height, or slightly higher, so that's about there. And then it's pretty straightforward. You get your nail, take that one, put that one in, put this one in, and you'll get better at this with experience. Once you've got your plate level and your trap set, just pop it on like so. And there you go. You're in business. So when the possum comes along, so put a little bit of lure to get his attention or her attention, and you want him to come up around the side, and then some lure. I'm going to put some lure above it. So the possum will come up on the tree, start eating its lure, and then they just can't help themselves. A back leg will go down on that trap and you'll catch the possum. So, and see how you can get down onto the ground. What they do, I've done a lot of camera work, they kick around for a couple of minutes and then they seem to resign themselves and they'll just go to sleep. You've seen it if you've done a lot of trapping. You'll come along in the morning, the possum's sound asleep, curled up. They tend to resign themselves to their fate pretty quickly. Now that's an above ground set with nails. They work really well, and you can do a lot of them in a day, and all you need to carry with you is a couple of nails, and you're not going to catch any kiwi, which is brilliant. This next set is a very effective set. It draws possums really well, and the materials are abundantly supplied for you. They're all over the place. So find where you want to do your set. In this case, it's beside there's a nice tree alongside a run. Look for a forked stick, and there's no shortage of them. I had to walk about 10 metres to find this one here, and then that's in, whoops, get that into place. So, like so. You don't want it to move when the possum's on there, so bed it into the ground a bit down here, and then all you need is a bit of stick in your trap. So here's a nice piece of stick. Get a staple and just hold this on. You don't want it to move. You don't want your trap to move when the possum heads up the tree, because you'll alert him to the fact that something's not quite right, and you'll have a job catching him or her. So that's that. And if your trap's wobbling around too much, like this one is, again, you don't want things to move. You want your possum to feel really secure. You want him to be focused on your bait. You don't want to distract him from his purpose or her purpose. So just good old staple in there, and that's nice and firm. Set your trap. And again, you always want your plate facing forward. I know I'm droning on, but make sure that plate's nice and level. It'll pay dividends if you do. So that's nice and level. Put your trap in place, like so. That just sits on there. Now see how well that sits there. That's just not going to move at all. Possum's going to come up here, and bang, he's going to be in your trap. Nail your trap to the tree. Now don't put your chain down through the fork, because the possum can't get down onto the ground. He's not going to go down through there. 9 times out of 10 he's not anyway. He'll jump over the side. So nail your trap on. Tree's already flowered, and you're in business. An above ground set. When you get cracking, you can get a lot of these out, and they just keep catching possums. In fact, these will work better than ground sets because they just draw them. It's something different. They like to climb, and when a possum climbs, for whatever reason, they feel nice and secure. Okay, so that's the 2 above ground sets. There is a third way of doing it, but I won't give you too much information just now. I'm sure this is enough to keep you busy for a while. The next set is a hidden set, and these are incredibly effective at catching possums in areas where possums have become trap shy, and they do. Now I'll show you how to do a concealed set. A lot of the old timers wouldn't dream of leaving a trap exposed to the gaze of possums or whatever they were trying to catch. They always hid their traps, and as you probably know, if you've done any trapping at all, you still catch possums if you leave your trap exposed. But it's been my experience that hidden traps catch far more possums and better quality possums, and for far longer. You don't even need to use a lure as we have here, and in another video I'll show you how to catch possums without lure. It's fascinating, and I get a far more satisfaction out of it than blazing trees, and I catch far better possums too. So enough burbling. Make sure your trap is a hand span out from where a possum's going to be when he's standing up on his or her hind legs. So hand span there, drape your hammer down like so. It's going to be there, and that's where you want your plate. So make a nice solid platform for your plate and a good hole for your chain, because we want this to be completely concealed. Next, set your trap. Again, you want that plate to be nice and level, so keep your fingers out of the harm's way. And there you go. It's almost level. There, I'm happy with that. Now, bed your trap like you always do, really firmly. You don't want the trap to move when the possum stands, even though he's not going to see it. You don't want him feeling it, anything moving under his foot, because his natural reaction will be to pull his foot away, and you might still catch him, but you might only catch him by a toe. Next, conceal your chain. So just punch a bit of a hole into the ground, put your chain in there, staple it in, and then bury your chain. So that's step 1. Now if we just threw bits of whatever's available over that trap now, what would happen is that probably when the possum stood on it, there'd be bits of twig caught up around its leg, and more than likely the possum's going to escape. He's going to be able to pull his foot out, or the trap's not going to close properly. So in the States they have latex covers. If you're anything like me, you spend a lot of time on YouTube watching how people trap in other countries around the world and in New Zealand, and they use a latex trap cover. Well, you can't get them in New Zealand, and I was going to import some, and then I had an idea, and it works really well. And all I use is good old 2-ply toilet paper. This bit's almost looks second hand, but trust me, it's not. And then I just split them like that, not because I was going to say half Dutch, but that wouldn't be correct, would it? Not because I'm tight, but just I found it just works better with just the one sheet. Now you hold this over your plate like so. Now what I did is found an old log, which was not, there's always old logs lying around, and I've dug out some nice fine material from under it. You can even get peat moss, and that works really well, and carry that around with you. You don't need much. So if you're in an area where there's not a lot of dead logs, grab some peat moss. All you do is hold that bit of paper over your trap and just trickle it on there like so, and hide your trap. Don't be tempted just to put sticks and twigs beside your trap to guide the possum in, because what can happen is the possum can knock that over your trap. He then stands on it and the trap gets caught up in this stuff. So what I normally do is just get a couple of sticks to guide the possum in over your trap like so. If you're just trapping for fluff, it doesn't really matter. The possum won't hurt himself knocking a bit of fur out. But if you're trapping for skins, obviously you don't want any fur knocked out of the skin. You want the possum to be able to knock these out of the way and he'll be fine. So just something like that. So when the possum comes into your trap, he's going to come in over the top, and then bang, you've got him. So there you go. There's 3 sets that you can use, so you can trap in any country. If there's kiwi, obviously you're going to use above ground sets, and if you're in an area, unfortunately there are too many of them now where there are no kiwi or weka, you can use concealed sets. In another video I'll show you how you can trap with a concealed set without any lure at all, and it's my favourite kind of trapping. You catch some big possums. You may think an area's been exhausted, and then you start using the methods that I'll show you, and you'll catch some big possums, some beautiful skins. You'll catch some very savvy possums. So what happens is this, is you go into an area and you trap it and you'll catch possums, and then after a while you stop catching and you'll think you've exhausted the supply of possums. You haven't. So you come back and you conceal your trap and you start catching possums all over again. You think, well, that's amazing, and then it peters out and you think you've caught all the possums. You still haven't. You're going to have some big does and some big bucks that have sat back and watched the other possums knocking around in a trap, and they've worked it out. And they've also associated the flower blaze with danger, and they won't go near it, and they call it neophobia. So what you need to do next is to be able to outsmart the possum, and hopefully, like me, you'll be able to do it.